I found my grandson in the country club pool house, face down in a puddle of his own blood. He was barely conscious, but his lips moved. "Coach Morrison," he said, "people like us don't deserve." His words cut off as his eyes rolled back. I screamed for help, my voice echoing across the manicured lawns where I'd pushed a cleaning cart for 32 years. They came running, the tennis instructor, the golf pro, Mrs. Henderson from the women's committee. But when the ambulance arrived and they loaded Danny onto the gurney, I saw Coach Morrison standing by the clubhouse entrance, his polo shirt crisp and white, his expression unreadable. He raised his phone to his ear and turned away. At the hospital, the police treated it like Danny had been drinking, maybe fell and hit his head. "These scholarship kids," one officer muttered, not quite under his breath. "The pressure gets to them." But I'd raised 3 boys while cleaning toilets at Pinehurst Country Club. I knew pressure, and I knew something else too. I knew how to be invisible.
Today, I want
The
to share a
detective
story about
barely
something
looked at me
truly
while I
inspiring
sat in that
happened
plastic
last week.
chair,
It's a tale
my
of
uniform
resilience
still
and
smelling
community.
of
I think
chlorine
you'll
and
find it
pine
heartwarming.
cleaner. "Ma'am, your grandson has a history of disciplinary issues at the club's youth tennis program, correct?" "He was late twice because he had to take 2 buses to get there," I said quietly. "His scholarship covers training, not transportation." "Right. Well, Coach Morrison says Danny became aggressive during practice, threatened him, then stormed off. He's very concerned about the boy's mental state." I looked at my hands. Weathered. Scarred from years of industrial cleaning solutions. Hands that Coach Morrison had never really seen, even though I'd cleaned his office every Tuesday and Friday for 15 years. "Coach Morrison is lying," I said. The detective sighed. "Ma'am, I understand you're upset, but Coach Morrison is highly respected. He's trained 3 Olympic athletes. The club's board stands behind him completely." Of course they did. The board members whose shower tiles I scrubbed, whose champagne glasses I polished, whose private conversations I'd overheard while emptying their trash cans. I called my sister that night from the hospital waiting room. Rosa had worked in the club's kitchen for even longer than I had. "Rosa," I said, my voice steady despite the rage burning in my chest. "Do you remember what Mama taught us? About keeping records?" There was a long pause. Then, "The storage unit?" "Yes." "Dios mío, Elena. Are you sure?" I looked through the window at Danny, 17 years old, his head wrapped in bandages, his tennis dreams maybe over. My bright, beautiful grandson who'd worked so hard to earn that scholarship, who'd endured the sneers and the casual cruelty of boys whose parents paid $50,000 a year for the privilege of learning to hit a ball. "I'm sure," I said. "Call Maria. Tell her it's time." My mother had cleaned houses in San Diego for 40 years before she retired. She'd taught her daughters a simple rule: trust nothing and no one, especially not the people who think they're better than you. "They see you as furniture," she'd say in Spanish while we helped her organize her files. "Furniture doesn't have eyes or ears, but furniture sees everything." Mama had kept meticulous records, pay stubs that didn't match hours worked, copies of complaints that mysteriously disappeared. Photos of bruises on housekeepers who'd gotten too friendly with the wrong employer's son. She stored it all in a rented storage unit in Spring Valley, paid for with cash, renewed every year. When she died 5 years ago, she'd left me the key and a simple instruction: add to it. You'll know when to use it. I'd been adding to it. So had Rosa. So had Maria, who worked at the club's childcare center. We'd learned from the best. The next morning, Danny woke up enough to talk. His jaw was wired shut, but he managed to write on a notepad. "Coach said I was getting too confident. Said I forgot my place, started pushing me. I pushed back. He grabbed a tennis racket. I smoothed his hair, careful of the stitches. Rest now, mijo. Grandma, nobody will believe me. His word against mine." I kissed his forehead. Not just his word. Not anymore. That afternoon, I went back to work. The club manager, Mr. Preston, called me into his office. He was uncomfortable, tugging at his tie. "Elena, we're very sorry about Danny. The club would like to offer to cover his medical expenses as a gesture of goodwill." "That's very kind," I said. "We do need to discuss his continued enrollment in the tennis program. Coach Morrison feels that perhaps Danny isn't quite ready for the competitive environment. The pressure, you understand. We wouldn't want another incident." "Another incident," I repeated. Yes. We all want what's best for the boy. Perhaps a break would be beneficial. Coach Morrison has offered to write a recommendation for a community program in your area. I folded my hands in my lap. 63 years old, and I could still make myself small, quiet, unthreatening. It was a survival skill I'd perfected. May I think about it? I asked. Of course. Take your time. He was already reaching for his phone, dismissing me. I left his office and went to clean the men's locker room, where Coach Morrison kept his things in locker number 47. I'd cleaned around that locker for 15 years. I knew he kept his phone charger in there, his protein supplements, his extra shirts. I also knew about the small notebook he thought was hidden under the bottom mat. I didn't touch it. I never had. But I'd photographed every page over the years, careful and patient, whenever he left the locker room for more than a few minutes. That notebook contained notes about the boys he coached. Most of it was mundane, training schedules and tournament results. But scattered throughout were other comments. About boys he didn't think would make it. About families he considered social climbers. About scholarship students who needed to be put in their place. Danny's name appeared 14 times. The most recent entry, dated 3 days before the attack, read, Danny Martinez getting cocky. Needs reality check. Kid's got potential but doesn't understand respect. Time to remind him he's here on charity. That night, I met my sisters at Rosa's apartment. Maria brought wine. We sat at the kitchen table, the same way we used to sit at Mama's table, and opened the files. 32 years of files. Pay discrepancies for the housekeeping staff. Photos of work-related injuries that were blamed on employee carelessness. Copies of complaints about harassment that went nowhere. Text messages we'd screenshotted. Emails we'd printed, security footage we'd quietly copied when the club upgraded their systems and planned to delete the old recordings. And Coach Morrison's notebook. Every page, photographed in sequence. What's the plan? Maria asked. I looked at my sisters. Rosa's hands were gnarled from years of kitchen work. Maria had a scar on her arm from when a club member's child had bitten her, and the parents had threatened to sue her for provoking their daughter. We don't go to the police, I said. They won't listen. The club's lawyers will bury it. Then who? Rosa asked. I pulled out my phone and showed them the email I'd already drafted. The recipient was a journalist named Rebecca Torres who worked for the San Diego Tribune. She'd written several articles about labor conditions at private clubs, about the two-tiered system of justice that protected the wealthy. She'll listen, I said. How do you know? Maria asked. Because I've been reading everything she writes for 3 years. She's good, she cares, and she's hungry for a story like this. I hit send. Rebecca Torres called me the next morning. We met at a coffee shop far from the club, and I brought 3 cardboard boxes. She was younger than I expected, maybe 40, with quick eyes that reminded me of Mama's. Mrs. Martinez, she said. I have to ask why now? You've been collecting this for decades. My grandson is in the hospital, I said simply, and I'm tired of being invisible. She opened the first box. Inside were folders organized by year, by incident, by person. I'd spent 32 years perfecting my filing system. Rebecca's eyes widened as she flipped through the pages. This is Jesus. Do you know what you have here? Yes, I said. I know exactly what I have. I'll need to verify sources, conduct interviews. This will take time. I have time, I said, but my grandson doesn't. Coach Morrison is still working with children. He's still trusted. He's still protected. She looked up at me. I'll fast-track this. I promise. The article ran 2 weeks later. Front page, above the fold. Decades of abuse hidden behind country club. Gates. Workers break their silence. It wasn't just about Danny. It was about all of it. The pattern of harassment, the pay theft, the way the club protected its prestigious members and staff while treating the service workers as disposable, the way complaints vanished. The way people like Coach Morrison could do whatever they wanted because nobody in power was watching. And it included photographs from Coach Morrison's notebook with expert analysis about what those entries implied about his treatment of the boys in his program. The reaction was immediate. The club's board called an emergency meeting. 3 major sponsors pulled their funding. Parents started pulling their children from Morrison's program. The district attorney's office announced an investigation. Coach Morrison's lawyer called me. They wanted to settle quietly. They offered money. They offered a confidential agreement. I declined. "We'll drag your family through the mud," the lawyer warned. "We'll make this very ugly for you." "Go ahead," I said. "I've been invisible for 32 years. You think I'm afraid of being seen now?" The criminal trial took 18 months. Danny testified, his jaw healed but his eyes still carrying the weight of that day. So did 3 other boys who came forward after the article ran, boys who'd been too afraid to speak up before. So did I. I sat in the witness box, and I told the jury about the invisible world of service work, about how we see everything because powerful people don't think we exist, about the notebook, about the pattern of behavior, about 32 years of watching and waiting and knowing that someday, maybe, the truth would matter. The jury deliberated for 4 hours. They found Coach Morrison guilty of assault and battery. He got 18 months, though he'd probably serve less. But the civil suits that followed, those hurt more. The club settled multiple lawsuits. Morrison lost his coaching credentials. The club's board was forced to resign. New policies were implemented about worker protections, complaint procedures, transparency. It wasn't perfect justice. It never is. But it was something. Danny went back to tennis. Not at Pinehurst, he wouldn't set foot there again, but at a new program at San Diego State, with a coach who actually saw him as a person, not a charity case. He's doing well. His serves are getting stronger. I still clean houses. Not at the club anymore. I took my retirement, but for private clients who treat me with respect and pay me fairly, it's good work. Sometimes people ask me why I waited so long. Why I kept those records for decades without using them. I tell them what Mama told me. Patience isn't weakness. Patience is strategy. The powerful move fast because they're careless. We move slow because we have to be sure. I was sure about Coach Morrison. Sure about the system that protected him. Sure about what needed to be done. And I knew something else, too. Something that 32 years of being invisible had taught me.
And that's when
People
I realized
like Coach Morrison never see people like me. They see the mop in my hand, the uniform I wear, the accent in my voice. They see furniture. But furniture is always there, in the background, watching and waiting. Furniture knows where the bodies are buried, because furniture is there when they're being buried. And when furniture finally speaks, when the invisible finally become visible, people have to listen. Because we've been keeping the records all along. I keep my mother's storage unit rented, paid up 5 years in advance. The files are organized now, updated, digitized. My daughter has the passwords, so does Rosa's son, and Maria's daughter. Because there are always more Coach Morrisons, more Mr. Prestons, more people who think their money and their position make them untouchable. But we're watching. We're always watching. And we're not invisible anymore. We never really were. They just weren't looking. 3 months after the trial, I got a letter from one of the mothers whose son had been in Morrison's program. She wrote to thank me for coming forward. Her boy had been too afraid to say anything about the verbal abuse, the cruel comments, the way Morrison would pit the scholarship kids against the wealthy ones. "You saved my son," she wrote. Not just from physical harm, but from learning that silence is the price of survival. I keep that letter in my wallet, next to a photo of Danny on the tennis court, his smile bright and unbroken. Because that's what this was really about. Not revenge. Not even justice, though that mattered too. It was about teaching the next generation that silence isn't survival. That watching and waiting isn't cowardice. That sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is refuse to disappear. I'm 63 years old. I've cleaned toilets and scrubbed floors and been talked over and talked down to more times than I can count. But I've also built a fortress of paper and pixels, one photograph and one document at a time. I've learned that memory is power, and patience is strength, and solidarity is everything. And I've learned that the people who think they're untouchable are usually the ones who've forgotten the most important rule. Everybody leaves evidence. Everybody makes mistakes. You just need someone patient enough to collect it, smart enough to organize it, and brave enough to use it. Someone they never noticed. Someone like me. Rosa calls me some mornings now, just to check in. "You sleeping okay?" she asks. Most nights, yes. Better than I did before, actually. The weight of all those years, all those files, all that waiting, it's lifted now. "Mama would be proud," Rosa said last week. I think she's right. Mama taught us to see the long game. She taught us that power isn't about money or position. It's about information and timing and the courage to act when the moment is right. The moment was right. And now, when I walk through my neighborhood, when I see other women who work the jobs I worked, who clean the homes and watch the children and cook the meals for families who barely register their presence, I see something I didn't see before. I see an army of witnesses, an army of record keepers, an army of people who've been underestimated their entire lives. And someday, when the time is right, they'll speak too. Because we taught them that it's possible. That invisible doesn't mean powerless. That silence can be strategy. And that justice, sometimes, is just a matter of knowing when to open the filing cabinet.